Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report News Hour, 16th year of Changi, the 6th month, and I believe the 6th, no, that's yesterday, right? I think maybe today is the 7th day. Is that right? Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Yeah, today's the 7th day. 7th day by the heavenly countdown. 1st of July on the solar calendar, the Gregorian calendar. And this is Tim Ellis sitting in for the second king of Telugu Kanji Moon. Let's go see what's happening around the kingdom. All right. Right now in Chongpeng, Tennessee, 73 degrees and mostly sunny skies, periods of cloud and sunshine today. High of 84, tonight rather cloudy and humid, low 67. And in father's hometown of Cheongju, North Pyongyang Province in Korea, currently 79, getting down to 73 tonight, cloudy, warm, and very humid, periods of rain, some heavy late. Tomorrow, high of 79, a couple of mornings, thunderstorms, otherwise cloudy, very humid. And then at the Cheongju Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, right now 74 and mostly cloudy, 86 for high today, cloudy and uncomfortably humid, a couple of afternoon showers and a heavy thunderstorm. And then 68 for a low tonight, occasional evening rain and a thunderstorm, otherwise overcast and humid. And then down in Limestone County, Texas, at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground, currently 70 degrees, mostly cloudy skies. 94 for a high today, intervals of clouds and sunshine. And tonight, clear to partly cloudy, low of 73. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently 82 and mostly clear. Tonight, low is 76, mainly clear, warm, and very humid. Tomorrow, here we go. Partly sunny and very hot. High of 97. 97 for a high tomorrow at the Suncheon Palace. And at the Gunma Palaces in Japan, currently 76. Low tonight of 7. Okay, well, that is the low for tonight. No, well, 75, I'm sorry, 75 for a low tonight. And cloudy and very humid with a couple of thunderstorms, especially early. And tomorrow, high of 88, very warm and humid with times of clouds and sun, a couple of afternoon thunderstorms. And then finally in Ilan, Taiwan, currently 87 degrees right now, under clear skies, partly cloudy tonight, 78, 96 for a high tomorrow, partly sunny and thunder, and with thunderstorms in parts of the area. So it looks like the Suncheon Palace takes the prize today with the highest temperature in the kingdom. All right, let's go to Father's Word, and I'm in the book on the restoration of the true God's homeland. And let me get some light on this. I'm in chapter 4, section 5.1. When we think of the name true parents, or true parent, actually here, it's very obviously true parent. And remember that Father on November 1st, 1996 stated that the name that God gave to Reverend Sun Myung Moon is true parent. That's the name, right? That's the name that he gave to Father. True parent, that's his name. And so Father is the true parent. Don't take my word for it. That's what God said. Okay. And so, yeah, but doesn't he need a true mother? Yes, he does. And so the woman that he chooses from out of the fallen world and then removes her original sin. Can you hear them? Can you hear them screaming? Can you hear them screaming? Yes, that's the sound of family-fed people screaming around the world. Anyway, when he chooses a woman from the fallen world and removes her original sin, and then educates her, yes, there you go again, more screams, educates her so that she can reach in the final moment the level of completion level of true mother. Well, that's how they become true parents at the completion level. And so Hak Jahan was in the true mother position, of course, as soon as she was blessed with true father in 1960. But that's a position that she was occupying, and she had to grow to grow her character to reach the completion of her character, and then also the completion of her unity with true father. You know, and the Family Federation will say that, oh, you know, in 2010, in what was it, May 2010, I think it was May 2010. Father said, okay, now everything's been accomplished. The true parents are finally one. That declaration was based on a promise that she had made, that she would do that. But I think it's quite clear to anyone who has eyes to see and ears to hear that she has broken that promise in a very, very terrible way. Yeah. And so they have established a new religion that has really very little to do with True Father's teaching. And theirs is basically the religion of this shaman woman that is named Jahan. And this shaman woman that they refer to as, how do they refer to it? Anyway, what do you say? So anyway, but Father says that when you think of the phrase true parents, you think of the phrase true parents, it is because it is through true parents that history is governed. Chidite, well, that means governed. It is because of true parents that we can have a beginning point for entering into a new world. And it's because of true parents that we are able to subjugate Satan. The internal bond that makes this possible all comes about as a result of true parents. And it's because of true parents that we can conquer Satan, who has conquered the external world, and for the first time liberate God. And the true parents represent the center point for doing all of this. So therefore, we should live with true parents and to uphold the commands of true parents and be thankful for this wonderful grace that we are able to be in this age where we can uphold true parents' orders and act accordingly and act according to those orders. This is 1971, April 29th. Interesting. All right, let me just turn off my flashlight there. Okay. So it's amazing that Father was identified by God, and then also that Father answered the calling when he was 16 years old. If he had not answered the calling, there was no other choice. There was no other sort of candidate that God had who could step in, and Father chose not to answer that call. And so I really hate to think what would have happened to the world if Father had decided not to do that. Then Satan would have his way for, I don't know, maybe another I don't know. I would imagine that the the extension of the providence would at least be in the thousands of years. But I don't know. But anyway, we are very fortunate that we have the true parent. We have the true parent with us in this era, and this beginning point towards a new world has begun. Of course, the true father has established his lineage, and the second king of Chinese Kang Jin-mun and his son Shin Jung-mun are continuing that lineage on down. And so we are very, very hopeful that no matter what is happening in the external world, that God has won. God has won, and especially because True Father was blessed at the perfection level, the completion level, with uh, True Mother Congregation. This is also a fantastic, fantastic thing that happened in 2017, coming up 8 years ago, right? We're going to celebrate the anniversary of that on September 25th, because we always do it on the heavenly calendar, the 8th month, 4th day by the heavenly calendar. All right. Okay, let's see what's going on. And I'll tell you, not a whole lot. I know. Has Israel stopped bombing Iran? Maybe not, but that's um, and so there's sort of just the usual craziness. Well, the Senate had an all-night session on Trump's big, beautiful bill, and I guess they're going to continue into today. I don't know when they're going to actually vote on that thing. President Trump is warning that if it's not passed, then there will be a 68% tax increase. And for the long-term health of the country, that actually might be a good thing. All right. If there's a deficit, you can cover the deficit in two ways, basically, or I guess maybe three ways. But one way is to raise taxes. All right. And politicians don't want to raise taxes because that gets them voted out of they get voted out of office if they raise taxes. So if 68% tax comes into effect, a lot of politicians will get voted out of office. The other way is to borrow. Okay, the other way is to borrow. Another way is to borrow. And another way, of course, is just to say, hey, what the heck, and just throw caution to the wind and just start printing the stuff. you know, if you and I did it, we'd get arrested for printing counterfeit dollars. But the government gets to do that. Well, they've delegated the authority to the Federal Reserve, but basically it's the same thing. So among those three options, the most painful for politicians and most painful for us would be raising the taxes. But probably the best for the economy, long term, would be to raise taxes. Of course, short term, the stock market will crash, and people will suffer, people will lose their jobs. And yes, there will be short-term pain. Well, that's because we've been living way beyond our means until now. And at some point, we're going to have to pay for that. At some point. And raising taxes would be one way of sort of partially paying for that. But it's not going to happen, obviously. Politically, that's not going to happen. They'll figure something out and they'll get something passed, I'm sure. And we hear all sorts of things that are in it. Oh, I hear that Planned Parenthood is going to be defunded. Okay, well, I'm not holding my breath, but maybe so. If so, that'd be great. But we'll have to look at it, when it finally passes. The Senate version, of course, then has to go to the House, go back to the House, and then the Senate and House will each appoint a few people to get together and negotiate a common bill, which will then be passed by the House and Senate again, and only then will it go to the president, and he will choose whether to sign it or veto it. And I guess if it's anything like what he has proposed, then I guess he'll sign it, and then we'll know. Then we'll know what's in it. Like Nancy Pelosi said, you have to vote for it in order to know what's in it. That's the state of Washington, D.C. That's the state of Washington, D.C. now. Anyway, some Republicans have said, listen, I'm not going to vote for it. And so President Trump says, okay, well, then I'm going to challenge you in the primary. I'm going to put someone up to challenge you in the primary. And the man said, okay, well, in that case, I quit. I'm not going to run for re-election. And that sounds like a pretty principled approach, doesn't it? And I don't know why he objects, but I guess he has his reasons. Elon Musk is saying that if this bill passes, he will start a new party. And I think I referred to this before. Elon's a smart guy, but he doesn't know a whole lot about politics. I think we've discovered that over the past 5 months, haven't we? He does not know a whole lot about how American politics works. He should call Steve Forbes, ask him about starting a third party. I think Steve Forbes tried it once. And who was the other guy? I can't remember. One of the more successful third parties. But third parties haven't worked since the Republican Party, today's Republican Party, started as a third party back in the 50s or something like that, 40s or 50s. Since then, third parties have not been successful. So Elon Musk he's got a lot of money, and if he wants to plow that money into the American economy through an attempt to start a third party, I'm sure a lot of people will be very happy. They'll be happy to get the paycheck, but I would be highly, highly, highly skeptical that he will get anywhere. And maybe he'll become a spoiler. Maybe he will take votes away from Republicans in certain red states enough so that the Democrats will win those states. Perhaps that is, I think, the most likely thing to happen. If that. Okay. All right. Let's see here. See here. Let me try. Okay, let's try and share things with you. All right. It's happening. Senate BBB Vote-A-Rama, exclusive workers, moms urge passage. And it's a 1,000-page bill. And so there are things in it that are good for certain people. But then there are other things that are bad. And this is what happens all the time in Washington, D.C. You take a good bill and then you put a lot of bad stuff in it so that people have no choice but to vote for it. Oh no, you're going to kill the babies. It's a pretty underhanded way to operate, but that's how things work in Washington. All right, Zoran Mamdani has an openly racist tax plan that penalizes whiteness. Yeah, he's going to tax whiter neighborhoods more than less white neighborhoods. Okay. All right. I'm sure the real estate agents in New York are having a field day now with all the people wanting to get out. Okay. And Yale study reveals shocking truth. Spike protein lingers and grows. That's a sponsored story. Okay. No, we don't do sponsored stories. Someone paid money to have that news, or not. I don't call it news. Someone paid money to have this item put there. So, that's an advertisement basically. We don't do that. Okay. And let's see here. Marlowe says New York City mayoral candidate Mamdani preaching actual communism. Yes, he is. And New Yorkers are eating it up, or many of them are. And that's how communism comes in. And who said it? That you can vote your way into socialism, but you have to shoot your way out. So, yeah, New Yorkers. Okay, let's see here. Western, okay, newsletter. That's why I see. You see what I mean when I say there's not much happening today? This is July 1st, right? So I guess this is the official start of the summer doldrums. Slow news, slow news. But although some people say that the fact that things are kind of slow these days means that something big is about to happen. I don't know if that's true or not. We'll have to we'll have to wait and see. Okay, passenger carrying 16 live snakes arrested at India airport. Okay, snakes on a plane. Remember the movie that that was the title of a movie, Snakes on a Plane. Okay, and I don't know if they got the snakes before he got on the plane or after he got off. Let's just check that out. Hey, we got to do something here. Slithering creatures after stopping a plane passenger on Sunday. When he was arriving from Thailand. Oh, so he brought the snakes from Thailand. So there were snakes on the plane. Okay. That's the person that customs officers at this airport. Customs Zone 3 foiled yet another wildlife smuggling attempt. 16 live snakes, garter, rhino, and all these other snakes seized from passenger returning from Thailand. Oh my goodness. So yes, reality imitates art. Let's see here. All you need to know with Bradley J. Right now, we don't need to know anything, or not very much anyway. Senate rejects big, beautiful bill measure to remove illegal aliens from Medicaid. Well, we'll see what the House has to say about that. And this guy Burker says it's a moral obscenity. Of course, he's Democrat, so he's going to say that anything associated with Trump is bad. And this person says, I'm not going to make Trump tax cuts permanent. Why not? You're a Democrat of Michigan. And while there are some interesting things I'm willing to consider over there, making a tax cut for the wealthiest Americans is not what I'm here for. Okay. And Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. Big Beautiful Bill AI provision lets big tech continue to exploit kids, creators, conservatives. And ICE chief left-wing activists targeting children of ICE agents. Yes, they're getting worse. Left-wing activists are targeting ICE agents, with some going after agents' families, including their children. In a video posted to X on Monday, Lyons revealed that ICE and the United States Secret Service tracked down one particular activist who had been targeting the children of ICE agents online. Wouldn't you wear a mask if I kept your family safe? If it kept your kids safe? We ran an operation with the Secret Service, Lyons said. We arrested someone who was going online, taking ICE agent photos, posting their families, their kids' Instagrams, their kids' Facebooks, and targeting them. So let me ask, is that the issue here, that anyone is upset with masks, or is anyone upset that the ICE officers' families were labeled terrorists? In addition, Lyons highlighted recent remarks from Cudahy, California, Vice Mayor Cynthia Gonzalez, where she seems to suggest the 18th Street gang ought to start targeting ICE agents. You guys tag everything up, claiming hood, and now that your hood is being invaded by the biggest gang there is, there ain't a peep out of you, Gonzalez said in a video. It's everyone else that's not about the gang life and out there protesting and speaking up. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is now reportedly investigating Gonzalez over the shout out to the 18th Street gang. Similarly, Lyons showed a viral TikTok message from an activist who called for the execution of ICE agents. You can kill them. This isn't about social media clout anymore. This is about get a gun and start killing ICE agents. The activist in a TikTok video states. My office and agents are enforcing immigration law. They are not secret police. They are not Nazis, Lyons said. But people hiding behind keyboards are demonizing them. They're doxing them, stirring up an anti-ICE sentiment, and putting their families' lives at risk. ICE agents since President Donald Trump was sworn into office are facing 500% increase in assaults as they attempt to locate, detain, and arrest illegal aliens living in the United States. So apparently there are a lot of people who don't want to get caught, right? Who don't want to leave the United States. But interestingly, they're also waving foreign flags, which is hard to understand how that works. But anyway, and just before we came on, I saw this headline. I had to chuckle. Nayib Bukele, president of El Salvador, right, offers to ship mega prison inmates to Paris after fashion show glorifying criminals. Well, he could do that, but probably they won't notice because they've got so many criminals of their own. A few dozen more probably won't make a difference. But anyway, let's see what they're doing here. President of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, said on Sunday that his country is willing to send deported illegal immigrants detained at the Sicat mega prison to France after Mexican-American fashion designer Willie Chavarria held a performance inspired by the detainees at the Paris Fashion Week show. This California-based designer, reportedly described as Chicano and queer and proud of it, held a fashion show in Paris on Friday titled Huron that included 35 male models dressed and styled as Sicat inmates. The models wore white tall tees and sported crew cuts while walking out to Jose Feliciano's acoustic version of California Dreamin'. The footage from the event shows the models kneeling on the runway with their heads bent low in seeming submission. The shirts worn by the models were reportedly made in partnership with the American Civil Liberties Union. According to GQ magazine, Chavarria's show evoked the disturbing images of the 252 Venezuelan illegal migrants suspected of being members of the Tren de Aragua terrorist organization who were deported to El Salvador this year after President Donald Trump invoked the 1798 Alien Enemies Act. And I guess that's how they did it, ready to ship them all to Paris whenever we get the green light from the French government, Bukele said in English on his official Twitter account late Saturday evening. Minutes later, the official account of the Salvadorian press secretariat of the presidency translated Bukele's message to Spanish and stressed the government would take a firm stance against the attempt to glorify criminality. So, okay, he posted in English, okay? Why? Why not in French? Seems like, why did he post it in English? On Sunday afternoon, Bukele published a second message that read, "This is the result of glorifying criminals in Paris. He who spares the wolf sacrifices the sheep." The message was accompanied by a video of an unidentified crying woman denouncing being the repeated target of harassment in Paris and stating she was afraid of doing anything alone in the French capital. In a separate third message, Bukele wrote, "People complaining that we had to put 1.5% of our population in prison. By the way, more than half of them are undergoing rehabilitation and will be released in a couple of years." Bukele accompanied the text with a meme picture from Disney's 2018 film Avengers: Infinity War. French authorities have not publicly responded to Bukele's offer at press time. Well, you know why? Because he didn't write it in French. That's why they haven't responded. Since March 2022, El Salvador has been under a state of exception emergency decree that allowed Bukele to enact a massive crackdown against the country's most violent criminal gangs and enact several strict security policies, including the construction of Sicat. Bukele's policies have successfully curbed violent crime in what was once the homicide capital of the world. And he has indeed done that, and people sort of, especially liberal leftist types, like to scream and holler that, oh, he's a dictator, he's an authoritarian. Well, yes, he was. He is. it's interesting because Korea, of course, had military governments beginning in about 1961 and going up to about 1987, or well, I guess a little bit further. I guess yeah, one more president. I guess maybe 92, something like that. But Park Chung-hee, especially from 61 to 79, 18 years, really did a lot of good for Korea. And Koreans today look back and appreciate what he did. He negotiated a treaty with Japan to reopen diplomatic relations. Korea and Japan did not have diplomatic relations after Japan was defeated in 1945, and the Japanese military, of course, withdrew from the Korean Peninsula, and also many Japanese civilians withdrew from the Korean Peninsula, and Korea was liberated and became independent. So after that, Japan and Korea did not have relations because Korea wanted a certain amount of compensation for the years of not just colonization but annexation. A lot of people call it colonization, but if they look at the record, they see it's actually annexation. But then Park Chung-hee was able to negotiate that, and he took the money from Japan, the compensation money from Japan, or the reparations, I guess you call it, from Japan, and he invested it well. He invested it in steel mill. He invested it in shipbuilding. He invested it in automobile, and also I think Samsung got some of that money as well. And Pohang Steel, for example, or other companies that Korea is known for today got their start around that time. Not all of it, but around that time. And yes, he picked the winners. He picked the people, and these were the people that had a good relationship with him. That's true. But he certainly set the foundation for Korea to become what it is today. I've repeated a few times, but bears saying again that in the 1950s, Korea was one of the, if not the, poorest countries in the world. It's hard to imagine that today. And it's hard to imagine it's hard to realize how much Korea has advanced economically over the last 70 years now, 70 years or so. It's really the blessing of God. Or even, it's been it's coming up on 50 years pretty soon. In a couple of years, I will have been here I will have been somehow associated one way or another with Korea for 50 years. And even when I look back at when I was first arrived here in 1978 and look at Korea today, it's a completely different country, even during that 50-year period. So the reason I say that is because Bukele appears to be that kind of a dictator. Kind of the sort of the the dictator that goes down in history as having done things to set the foundation for his country to develop democratically later on. And I don't think that Korea could have developed the way it did during the 60s and 70s if it had the kind of democracy that it has today. In fact, obviously not. Even, before Park Chung-hee took power in 1961, Korea was going through just, well, it was political anarchy almost, and just confusion. And and corruption. And the one thing about Park Chung-hee was that he was a lot less corrupt than his predecessors. He did not sort of bring his family in. He did not make himself, or he did not, live a lavish life and things like that. So Bukele may be that kind of person. He may be the sort of the Park Chung-hee type of dictator. We'll have to look back 20 or years or so from now, 20, 30 years or so from now and see. But it's possible that El Salvador can become a kind of a financial center. It's interesting that, the IMF has tried their best to get him to stop buying Bitcoin. and and he refuses. And let's take a look. El Salvador Bitcoin address here, and we can okay. And it's public, and anybody can look it up and see how they're buying Bitcoin, even though IMF keeps telling them to stop. It's coming, I think. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Okay. Balance history. Okay, I think it's coming. This is bitcoin.gov.sv, Bitcoin office of El Salvador. There we are. There we are. There we are. See, the most recent purchase was made at 3:53:07 a.m. on July 1, 2025. So just a few hours ago, they're buying. You see, and they bought. How many did they buy? They bought one Bitcoin, and that brought their total balance to 6,224.18403612 Bitcoin. And, and they're just thumbing their nose, or shall we say, showing the middle finger to the IMF. And I think that is absolutely great. That's I love this guy. I love this guy just for that reason. I love it for that reason alone. Oh, look at that. I completely erased all my thingies here. So we'll see how Bukele goes down in history years from now. All right. Let's see. Okay, let's go to Newsmax, see what's going on there. Okay. Okay, Elon Musk. Musk threatens third party to take on MAGA and Dems. Right. And then Trump attacks Musk's subsidies and spending bill row. Musk says the country is run by a Porky Pig party, and that's true. That's true. That is true. Yes. Musk associate warns Trump. Elon never forgets. Okay. Let's see here. Let me share this with you. Japan won't sacrifice farm sector after Trump rice complaint. I've talked about the farm sector in Japan before. They're basically the one of a big pillar of support for the ruling LDP, Liberal Democratic Party. And the United States and Japan have been going back and forth on this rice thing since at least the 1980s. Maybe before that, but I think basically 1980s. The U.S. keeps telling Japan to open up the rice market, and then the U.S. is able to produce rice much more cheaply than Japan, and the taste is the same. You can go to an Asian market and you can buy koshishikari or other famous brands of Japanese rice, and you look at the bag and it's made in California or Arkansas, mostly California, and it tastes the same. No one can tell the difference. And it's a whole lot cheaper than in Japan. But Japan absolutely will not. Well, they did. Apparently, they have purchased some rice from the U.S., but not a whole lot. They have been fighting tooth and nail ever since the 80s because they say, oh, our farmers will all go bankrupt, which is true. Well, not all of them. And the farming sector has made efforts to adapt. For example, maybe you've heard of the square watermelons in Japan. Have you heard of those? They grow watermelons somehow so that they come in cubes actually, and it's good because the problem with the watermelons is that when you put it on the table, it starts rolling all over the place, and so the cube watermelon is easier to ship, right? You can ship more of them. You can fit more of them on a truck, and also they don't go rolling off the table all the time. So that's one way. Just as an example, sort of the value added uh, products that they've been developing in Japan to offset the effect that they know is coming. And at some point, they're going to have to sacrifice their rice. But come on, Japan. Can you imagine a Japan that doesn't grow any rice? Talking about food security, all if Japan somehow someday did something that the United States didn't like, and the U.S. would cut off Japan's supply of rice, that's about as bad as cutting off a kimchi from Korea, right? Or let's say that the U.S. What shall I say? Let's say that maybe apple pie is that what? There isn't any equivalent in the U.S. Okay. Let's say beer. All right. Let's say that no beer was produced in the United States. It was all produced outside the United States, and then somebody decided someday to sanction the U.S. by cutting off their supply of beer. Uh, Kind of like that, yes. And here's a bucolic scene there with looks like rice paddies ready to receive the transplanted saplings of the new rice crop. So part of the problem in Japan, of course, is that you have these small fields, these tiny, tiny fields, whereas in the United States, the rice is grown on huge, huge, huge fields, and I think the seeds are sometimes spread by helicopter and stuff like that. So there's no way that they can compete with these kinds of fields. This looks like a mountain agricultural village, and looks like yes, looks like they're preparing to plant the new rice. Japan will not sacrifice the agricultural sector as part of its tariff negotiations with the United States. Its top government spokesman said on Tuesday after President Donald Trump complained that its ally was not importing American rice. Trump wrote in a social media post that Japan's reluctance to import American-grown rice was a sign that countries have become spoiled with respect to the United States of America. I don't know if President Trump really understands the cultural, emotional importance that rice has in Japan. Think about it. Rice has been cultivated in Japan going back how many centuries? A lot. A lot. A lot. Going back, I don't know, to the Jomon era. I don't know. Maybe. And for example, all right, every year when it comes time to transplant the rice saplings, seedlings like you see here, the emperor of Japan, as a religious ceremony, because he's kind of the head of the Shinto religion, as a Shinto religious ceremony, he will put on some boots. Yeah, he will put on some boots, and he will go into the water like this, and he will plant a few seedlings. Yeah, and that's a religious ceremony. And I think the imperial palace maintains a small plot of land, small, very, very small rice paddy for that purpose. And then they will harvest that rice in the autumn, and then that harvested rice is also used for religious purposes. So rice in Japan is cultural, emotional. It's even religious. It's even religious. Okay? So Trump is not going to get them to give up their rights. I can tell you that. He may get some concessions out of them a little bit, but yeah, I have great respect for Japan. They won't take our rice, and yet they have a massive rice shortage, he wrote on Truth Social. And that is true. And so Japan actually has been importing rice, I think, from Korea. Japan has been grappling with a doubling in rice prices due partly to a weather-driven poor quality harvest in 2023 that caused a shortage last year. The government has released almost its entire stock of emergency rice since March in an effort to bring prices down. We are not thinking about doing anything that would sacrifice the farm sector. You bet. Absolutely not. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi told a press conference that, yes, I mean, the Liberal Democratic Party is not going to commit political suicide. Right? He, as well as Farm Minister Shinjiro Koizumi, who is either a former prime minister, maybe the son of a former prime minister. Yeah, maybe he's a son of a former prime minister. Declined to comment directly on Trump's post. Koizumi told a separate press conference that his ministry would continue to work with various ministries towards maximizing Japan's national interests. Translation, not on your life. When pigs fly, that's when we will allow American rice to flood our market. I don't care how expensive rice gets. We're not going to be flooding the market with American rice. That's the translation. Yeah. You know, I've eaten. Actually, when my wife and I are living in America, we buy. We go to the Korean supermarket, of course, to what's it called, H Mart, and we buy Korean brand rice, right? Which is also much cheaper in America than it is in Korea. And it's also grown in California. And I guess what they do is they take, the DNA or something, I don't know, and transplant it somehow so that they can grow the same rice in California that they grow in Japan or Korea. All right. White House Trump wrote Powell urging low rates. Apparently, this was a handwritten letter by President Trump to Jerome Powell. Things are getting serious. Wow. He's ready. Is that right? He wrote it and displayed a copy of Trump's handwritten notes to Powell on a piece of paper showing the interest rates charged by more than 24 countries. Yes. So Trump is getting serious on that one, isn't he? Right. We'll see what Powell does. The next Fed meeting isn't until the end of this month. I guess President Trump wants him to call an emergency meeting to lower rates now. But Powell keeps saying, who, by the way, is not an economist. You realize that? He's not an economist. He's a lawyer and a banker. He's not an economist. But anyway, he's probably not going to. I think Powell is digging his heels in. And so he's going to keep doing what he's doing until May of next year when his term runs out. It's expected that he will reduce rates a couple of times this year. And Trump is saying that, if you lower rates and then later on you find that you have inflation, then no problem, just raise rates again. It doesn't really work that way. It takes a while for the effective rates to appear. And so you cannot say, oh, look, we have inflation. Let's raise rates today and we'll get rid of inflation tomorrow. It doesn't really work that way. But President Trump really feels that lowering rates will, first of all, lowering rates will push the dollar down even further, which will have the same effect as tariffs. And will also has another benefit that tariffs don't have. It makes American exports more competitive. They become cheaper. in the world. So it will put more effectively put a tariff on imports effectively, and it will encourage more exports, and so that will help to balance the payments of the United States with the world. So he wants that to happen, and it's interesting that it keeps pushing down the dollar. But anyway, has to be. I showed you the graph, I think, recently, and it's obviously intentional because the dollar has been the dollar index has been on a declining trend ever since the day that President Trump was inaugurated. All righty, let's see here. They want to end citizenship for certain crimes. They're doing this, and yeah, I still don't like the way they're doing this. Anyway, they're going to do what they want to do. All right. Mike Tyson urges Trump on cannabis reform. Well, U.S. destroyed billions in Iranian centrifuges. Billions, huh? And okay, mega bill aids everyday Americans. Maybe in the short term, yes, but I don't think it's going to do that in the long term. Okay. And save steep cuts for future bill. Microsoft says that AI is better than doctors for diagnosis. Could be. Russia seizes full control of Luhansk, according to Russia, to an official. All right, so that war is continuing. Yeah, in the North Korean IT scheme. Apparently, North Korea had thousands of their people working for American companies surreptitiously, pretending to be someone else. U.S. Department of Justice and FBI on Monday announced an arrest and indictments targeting North Korea's so-called IT worker program, where North Koreans obtained remote IT-related positions at more than 100 U.S. companies and used that access to steal money and information from a host of companies around the world. North Korean workers used compromised identities of more than 80 U.S. citizens to obtain remote jobs at more than 100 U.S. companies and caused more than $3 million in legal fees, remediation, and other costs, according to the DOJ. North Koreans also allegedly stole at least $900,000 worth of cryptocurrency from one Georgia-based company with their access, along with employer data and source code, including international traffic and arms regulations data from a California-based defense contractor, the DOJ said. Monday's announcement included one arrest, 2 indictments, searches of more than 24 U.S. locations hosting multiple laptops used by remote North Korean workers, and the seizure of financial accounts and websites used by the participants as part of an alleged scheme. The permanent mission of North Korea to the United Nations did not immediately respond. Okay. And Zhenjing Danny Wang and Kajia Wang, both U.S. citizens, were indicted as part of the operation. Well, that doesn't sound like Korean names. As I mentioned before, the name Wang is very, very rare in Korea, much more common in China. And somehow Zhenjing doesn't sound very Korean. Kejia. Well, I don't know what that is, but it's not Korean, not Japanese either. Zhenjing Wang was arrested in New Jersey, while Kejia Wang remains free. The DOJ spokesperson said in an email, attorney for Zhenjing Wang could not be immediately located. The 2 men, along with 4 other unnamed U.S. facilitators, assisted the North Koreans by procuring and operating laptops used by the overseas workers created financial accounts to receive money earned by the workers to be sent back to North Korea, and created shell companies to make the workers appear more authentic, according to DOJ, earning nearly $700,000 from this scheme for themselves. Federal prosecutors also indicted 6 Chinese nationals and 2 Taiwanese nationals for alleged roles in their operations. China would take all measures to safeguard the right to identity. So are these 2 people supposed to be Koreans? 1 arrest, 2 indictments, searches. Okay. It's not clear. Anyway, but I guess these guys were in the U.S. So, they're U.S. citizens. I see, U.S. citizens. All right. Okay. But North Korea is very creative in the way that they are able to get around the sanctions that the U.S. and UN have put on them. And of course, one way they do it is by printing fake U.S. currency. That's one thing that they do, and they're very good at it. Their currency often gets through bank tests, and of course they produce all kinds of methamphetamine and other drugs as well, which they export. They do a lot of stuff like that, and of course, stealing a cryptocurrency off of exchanges is another thing. So, hey, I think anyone who's involved in cryptocurrency knows that you need to put if you're going to own cryptocurrency, you need to put it on a cold wallet, and not your keys, not your coins, right? That's the phrase. All right, so North Korea still doing their thing, and they're able to survive that way. That's how they survive. Okay, let's see here. Right, we're about out of time. We have maybe. Trump says, okay, not offering anything to Iran, because I think we had that story yesterday, didn't we? Okay. All right, well, let's check to see if anything new has come up here. Trump's big, beautiful bill awaits final Senate vote. Live updates. The Senate enters 4th day of voting. So we take a look, see what's going on. Stuck in limbo. And Vance is in Washington as senators approach nearly 24 hours of consecutive floor debate. All right. The outcome in Congress is expected to be either a defining legislative win for Trump or a major setback early in his second term. Asked if Senate Republicans would reach a final vote on Tuesday, Vance told reporters, "We're going to find out." So I guess we don't know whether they're going to vote on this today or not. Okay, so, all right, so good luck with that. And we'll see what they finally decide to do. Something like it is going to pass. I don't think they're going to go for a 68% tax increase, if that's if that actually is the possibility. Let's see here. Trump says Doge may go back and eat Elon. Maybe so. And the Tesla shares tumble after Trump says Doge should look at Elon Musk's subsidies. So that feud is going to get worse, I guess, right? Okay. And Xi Jinping's wait, what is this? It doesn't make sense. He wages war on price wars. Okay. When firms raise prices, gouging their customers, in quotes, many governments complain. Some cannot resist intervening. But in today's China, the opposite is happening. In May, the state reprimanded car makers not for raising prices, but for cutting them. There are no winners in this price war, it said, blithely ignoring the happy customers who can now buy a zippy electric car for less than $8,000. Interesting. They want the prices to go up. Hmm. And they're issuing a directive to strip naturalized Americans of citizenship for criminal offenses. Can they do that? Maybe they can. Well, I don't think they can, actually. That's my understanding is that once you're a citizen, unless there was some kind of fraud involved in your obtaining the citizenship, I don't think they can take it away from you. So anyway, I'm sure that will also go to court and we'll see what they finally decide. In the end, the US Constitution says what? Whatever the US Supreme Court says it says. That's the reality. All right, gotta go. Thank you for being with us this morning. And I will see you tomorrow's Wednesday. So Wednesday we will continue our study of our father's speeches on the change of blood lineage. Praise God. God bless. Godspeed. God bless. Am I getting this right? May his kingdom come quickly.